This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Now, world share markets were back in form today on the back of two major events. Firstly, investors are digesting the U.S. Fed's policy statement after the chair signaled they're in no rush to tighten the policy. Also, Chinese tech stocks rebounded today after reassurances from Beijing about the recent crackdown on sectors like tech. We saw MSCI's emerging market index bouncing 2% today, having slid to its lowest since early December on Wednesday. South Africa's JSE All Share saw solid gains today, driven mainly by the top end of the market, as market heavyweight Naspers saw a recovery. That's after falling to its lowest level since March 2020 on Tuesday. Now, also coming up on today's show, West African nations are warming up to digital currencies. The US Fed keeps interest rates near zero amid signs of economic recovery. And mobile money services finally reach some remote parts of Nigeria. Now, Ghana is planning to introduce a government-backed digital currency to boost growth in its local economy. The government there hopes the electronic currency, the ECD, which will be regulated by the central bank, will help to improve financial services in the country. Here's CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reporting from Accra.
Ghana's central bank says it will start with a pilot of the digital currency ECD in September. The government wants to shift the country's economy into a cash-light one. Analysts say the introduction of the digital currency can spur growth in the local economy.
In the long term, it's going to help us have a cashless society, facilitate international transaction, and then reduce cost of printing, and then ensure transparency in our financial transaction.
Ghana's local economy is largely dependent on cash, but the introduction of mobile money by telecommunications companies has been widely accepted over the last few years. The central bank says transactions in the first half of this year have hit nearly $80 billion. It believes a digital currency, when implemented, can further boost the economy. Still, analysts say more needs to be done to make it easy for Ghanaians to accept the ECD for financial services.
Infrastructure is very poor. We need to invest in infrastructure, millions of dollars. Government needs to do it. The service providers must also release funds to do it. And then the cost of internet service provision is also high. It has to come down so that everybody would have the interest in taking part or assessing it.
Analysts also want the central bank to find ways to reduce the security risks involved with transacting in electronic currencies. The central bank says the pilot phase of implementing the ECD will determine whether it's safe to release the digital currency on a broader scale for transactions. It, however, believes the ECD, when introduced, will be safer to use, unlike cryptocurrencies that are not regulated by the government. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Now, Nigeria is also following in those footsteps. It has announced plans to launch its own cryptocurrency called the e-naira in October. You'll remember that the country previously barred its banks and financial institutions from dealing in or facilitating transactions in cryptocurrencies. Well, now the central bank says the e-naira will operate as a wallet against which consumers or customers can hold existing funds in their bank accounts. Well, let's delve further into the e-naira and, of course, its pros and cons with Hakeem Disu. He's the CEO of cryptocurrency platform CoinWa. Great to have you with us today, Mr. Disu. Now, of course, the CBN says it will launch a pilot scheme in October. But much like other central bank digital currencies, the main concern now is whether they'll get implementation right. So looking forward, is it clear what the e-naira will look like and whether it will resemble crypto such as Bitcoin or differ in some ways?
Okay, thank you very much, Uche. I think firstly we need to appreciate the Nigerian government for coming up with this giant stride for Africa. That's like this currency is going to evolutionize and lift millions of Africa out of poverty. Considering the implementation, there's nothing to worry about. This is just like a revolution, like currency moving from digital to physical. So it's still the same thing. It's nothing to worry about. It's still a win-win situation. It's like a win before the game. Don't forget, Nigeria is the most active users when it comes to cryptocurrency in the world. We are the #1 in the world. So this is like a win for Nigeria even before they launch the cryptocurrency.
Well, talking about how they're going to implement it, unlike a cryptocurrency, which of course is tradable, it wildly fluctuates in terms of prices. It also has limited use. The expectation is that a central bank digital currency will be more stable and have more widespread acceptance. So in light of that, give us a sense of the potential benefits that we expect to see for the Nigerian market once that is launched.
Okay, great. #1 thing is financial inclusion. By financial inclusion, I mean more than 60% of 60 million Nigerians don't have a bank account. So with this cryptocurrency in place now, we can have so many people that can have their own digital wallet and can transact within Nigeria and outside Africa, and this will make it more seamless. And also, don't forget that this currency also will be like a seamless and borderless transaction. Also, this will revolutionize the financial system in Africa. And this might also be the central currency Africa has been waiting for. Don't forget, America has dollar, Europe, they have euro. Africa, we don't have our own central currency. So this might even be the central currency that all Africans will have to trade on, considering the African continental trade agreements going on. This might be the currency Africans will have to adopt, considering Nigerian human, material, and material resources and values also. So I think this is like the best, like a win-win situation for Nigeria and Africa in general.
Well, as much as many, including you, are quite positive about this new development, some do say that we can't ignore the fact that central bank digital currencies, they could actually disrupt the financial system. They could diminish the traditional banking system as well. What are the risks involved? Do you agree that Nigeria's financial institutions could emerge the losers from this launch?
Nigerian financial institutions can never lose. Instead, this will help them to cut down on operational costs, the cost of maintaining your buildings, cost of maintaining staffs. Like this will cut down on all these costs. So this is like a win-win situation. Like I said, like it's just, I don't know, but we just need to appreciate the CBN for doing this for Africa. Like this is just the best gift for Africa at this moment.
Well, we have to take...
It's a win-win situation.
Right. Well, we do have to take note that countries such as the US, or developed countries such as the US and the UK, are taking some time to really work through how a CBDC would look, because CBDCs are also sparking some debate about data privacy, for example. Some believe that officially run digital currencies, they could hand unprecedented power to policymakers once they launch. Is that a concern in Nigeria with the launch of the e-naira?
No, I don't think that's a problem, because firstly, look at it. This stable coin we're talking about is going to be backed by Nigerian naira and our dollar reserve. And there's no cause for an alarm. It's a win-win situation. Let's say, everybody has a bank account, and in your bank account, they have your private information. So I don't think this is something to worry about. And this also helps reduce the risk of illegal transaction, fraud, terrorism, and the like. So coin in place, the government will be able to put in checks and balances on cryptocurrencies and other digital currency. This is a very, very good move. This is something that is welcoming. Like, I'm so happy that Africa is even moving beyond the way Europeans and Americans are looking when it comes to this.
Right. Well, we'll certainly be watching. Many thanks for your insights, Mr. Diso. That, of course, is Hakeem Disu, CEO of cryptocurrency firm CoinAwa, joining us there in Lagos. And moving on now, global ratings agency Fitch has warned Tunisia of the risk of delay to an IMF program that will help alleviate the country's large financing pressures. The Tunisian president suspended parliament and dismissed the prime minister, raising new political uncertainties in the North African state. Here's CGTN's Adnan Shaushi reporting.
Fitch Ratings warned in a note that President Kais Said's moves could further complicate Tunisia's economic, social and political crisis. In addition, the fragile coalition in parliament, tensions between the ruling and opposition parties, and entrenched social opposition, including opposition from the labor union to substantial fiscal consolidation measures, could lead to a delay of the crucial IMF funding.
The current political crisis has negative repercussions on the economic situation and public finances. Tunisia needs an urgent funding of $1 billion to repay loans and the salaries of civil servants. The decisions of the president are political, but their impact on the economy are considerable. It would be difficult for Tunisia to negotiate with the IMF and seek funding without political stability.
The Global Credit Rating Agency noted that the Tunisian president's actions raise new political uncertainties for the North African state, and whose economy has struggled to recover from the Arab Spring Revolution more than 10 years ago.
What worries Tunisia's international partners and critics at home is that the president now has all the powers. This could pave the way for a return to dictatorship. The business community urges the head of state to respect the constitution and human rights and to present a clear roadmap for economic reforms.
Fitch Ratings believes it is unlikely that President Zayed will use his powers to push through difficult measures to address financing pressures, such as cuts to the large public sector wage bill, which represented 17% of GDP in 2020. Analysts say such action would be unpopular and could coalesce social pressure against him.
I disagree with Fitch analysis on this point. The president has the power to implement any reform and has the support of the population. International donors are looking for one interlocutor to discuss the necessary reforms. The problem in Tunisia has always been the instability of government and state negotiators.
Earlier this month, Fitch Ratings downgraded Tunisia's long-term foreign currency issuer default rating to B- from B, with a negative outlook. Fitch explained that the prospects for reforms that would lower fiscal deficits, stabilize debt and contain external liquidity pressures were poor before the current crisis. In addition, financing pressures will continue to mount in the absence of strong reforms and external support. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And now to some corporate headlines. South African banks say it could take about 2 weeks to replace about 1,400 automatic teller machines that were vandalized and looted during the recent violent unrest in the country. Now, the Banking Association of South Africa adds that as much as $1.4 million was stolen during those riots. And Kenya's electricity generating company has announced plans to install new geothermal power plants with a capacity of up to 682 megawatts in the next 4 years. Now, the move is expected to set the stage for cheaper electricity in the country. KenGen says the planned plants are in line with its geothermal expansion program that will see it achieve its targeted installed power generation capacity by 2025. And MasterCard has reported a 36% rise in second quarter profit, underpinned by a recovery in global spending. Now, the company's shares rose about 2% in pre-market trading as cross-border volumes rose 58% on a local currency basis. This was largely driven by a pickup in international travel and the reopening of its business. And shares in Uber have dropped following reports that SoftBank is selling an estimated third of its stake in the ride-hailing firm. According to reports, SoftBank is offloading around $2 billion worth of shares to help cover what it has lost by betting on Chinese ride-hailing firm Didi and other investments. Now, Uber shares were down by as much as 5% in extended New York trading today. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. Well, let's take a short break now, still coming up on the show. Venture capital funding boosts startups despite the pandemic in South Africa. And Zimbabwe civil servants to get a 50% wage hike amid rising costs of living.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay, we'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Tunisia. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back. Well, let's go to Egypt now, where authorities are looking forward to completing membership in the Africa Finance Corporation. Now, the Lagos-based lender has already expressed interest in funding Egypt's infrastructure, renewable energy and transportation sectors. With the details, here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim.
The African Finance Corporation describes itself as a majority private sector-owned African financial institution that provides expertise and funding of infrastructure projects in 35 African countries. It has invested nearly $10 billion in the continent since being established in 2007. Talks this week in Cairo between the head of the corporation and Egyptian authorities centered on spearheading investments in the North African country.
The two sides agreed to embark in projects in telecommunications, in transport, producing railway carriages, especially electric trains, setting up different plants in the Suez Canal zone, and renewable energy projects.
The Pan-African Multilateral Institution is also set to partner with the Sovereign Fund of Egypt in several projects, including the distribution of locally produced COVID-19 vaccines to the rest of the continent. According to the Egyptian Minister of Planning, the North African country is also in line to become a full member of this institution that already has about 31 African countries.
Egypt is keen on being a member because the country is in the midst of mega infrastructure projects that require huge budgets, and a membership would create access for financing by the AFC. The institution provides technical assistance to its members, provides loans, and can also be a partner and stakeholder in some of these infrastructure projects.
Meetings in Cairo were considered a breakthrough in relations with the organization. The African lender has invested $100 million in Egypt since 2007, and just this week it has inked $600 million of funding, and which will reach $1 billion once the North African country becomes a full member. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And let's turn to South Africa now, where venture capital is going strong despite the COVID-19 pandemic ravaging through the country. In fact, in the last year, there was a surge of investment and funding in fintech companies that are providing solutions. Here's fund managers rose over $87 million in 2020, with investment going to 122 startups in the country. Here's CGTN's Sumitra Naidu with more.
While COVID continues to wreak havoc, South African entrepreneurs are finding new and innovative ways to do business, and they're managing to attract funding. According to the latest venture capital industry survey, more deals were recorded in 2020 than in 2019.
When COVID hit, a lot of our members, instead of focusing on new investments, invested in their existing companies that they've already invested in to help them with working capital, to assist them. But what we saw is that venture capital actually continued to grow despite COVID, despite difficult economic circumstances.
While international investors showed keen appetite in South Africa, a big chunk of the venture capital came from local investors. Government spurred the industry on with an attractive tax incentive scheme that just ended after 10 years.
There was an initiative by government called Section 12J, the VCC, Venture Capital Companies, which started out in 2009. And they promulgated this for about 12 years with the sunset clause of June 2021. And a lot of VCs opened their doors and actually raised money from retail investors. And the retail investors received a deduction from their taxable income of the investment that they had made. This is where our fund is, Caidon Venture Partners. We're about R250 million fund, and we've got about 600 investors.
Fintech remains the most popular areas, with agri-tech receiving the most investment.
The main sectors that the investment is going into is technology-based sectors. I think that the lockdown offered opportunities to invest in industries or businesses that wouldn't have necessarily thrived or grown so quickly if it wasn't for lockdown and for COVID. Some of these businesses would be like online delivery, payment systems to facilitate online payment and shopping, etc. So a lot of the solutions we're seeing has to do with changing behavior in terms of consumer behavior changing as a result of lockdown.
Apart from COVID, South Africa has had its own setbacks with the recent rioting and looting, not ideal for the country's image or investor sentiment. But experts in the industry believe this won't be enough to deter capital venture flows.
Look, I think what's happened in South Africa has definitely been, from a brand point of view, it's not done us any favors. There's no question about that. But it's a short-term thing. The fact that it was put to bed very quickly, I think it's shown the resilience of the South African communities. So short-term, yes, it could be a little bit of a blimp, but I don't think it'll have a long-term impact on the capital flowing into South Africa and Africa.
In the last year, over 50% of funding came from Cape Town-based investors, and over 50% of the money went to businesses with female equity. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And in Zimbabwe, a 50% wage hike for the country's civil servants has been described as a step in the right direction. But some say it's not enough to keep up with the rising costs of living. Here's CGTN's Farai Mwakutuya explaining from Harare.
Government says the salary adjustments fulfill a promise it made to stagger increases for hard-pressed employees after a 25% increment in April. However, civil servants and some analysts believe it's not enough.
Although it's not enough, but I believe it's a good step forward.
given that the majority of our civil servants were now being classified as the working poor, where they are working, but what they are earning doesn't even suffice for them to earn equal to the poverty bottom line.
Civil servants are also unhappy that this was a unilateral decision by the government, which was not driven by the collective bargaining exercise that would have ensured that the employees' demands were also put on the table. One of them is to be paid in US dollars. School teacher Munyaradzi Masiwa has been grappling to make ends meet since the reintroduction of the greenback as legal tender.
The only thing that will change our lives is a restoration of our US dollar salaries. The economy of Zimbabwe is now in US dollars. Everything you want to buy, you are asked to pay in US dollars. We are earning an equivalent of around 280 US dollars right now, and our demand is 540 US dollars, and you can see the difference.
Treasury says it's unable to meet the demand despite posting budget surpluses.
So if you have a surplus, that means you can pay. You have extra money that you can pay. And if you're working, the majority of the people that are working for you in poverty, and you are claiming that you have a surplus, that means you have the resources to pay them.
Labour unions say they will keep pressing their demands, and some, representing teachers, have warned that their members may not return to work when schools resume after the current COVID-19-induced closure. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
You're watching Global Business Africa. Let's take a quick break now, but still to come on the show. The U.S. Fed keeps interest rates near zero amid signs of economic recovery. And England scraps quarantine for fully vaccinated EU and U.S. visitors.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
No one again began holding guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
The activity, thank you very much for your time now. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients family members are not there. There's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome back. And now to some international news. The U.S. Fed has kept its benchmark interest rate near zero amid the rapid spread of the Delta variant. Now, the Fed says the U.S. economy is continuing to make progress despite pandemic concerns. Here's Giles Gibson reporting.
With the U.S. in the grip of its first coronavirus surge since last winter and half of its population still unvaccinated, the Federal Reserve says the economic recovery is still heading in the right direction.
Indicators of economic activity and employment have continued to strengthen, and real GDP this year appears to be on track to post its fastest rate of increase in decades. Much of this rapid growth reflects the continued bounce back in activity from depressed levels.
Inflation, which the Fed insists is only transitory, remains a nagging concern, with prices for everything from gas to airfares ticking up this year. The International Monetary Fund, which released its latest forecast for the global economy this week, is watching key inflation indicators in the US very closely.
If they were moving kind of durably away from the Fed's 2% target and moving away in a way that we haven't seen before, then that would indeed give pause for concern, because that would be the sign that what we're seeing right now is no longer transitory, but it could show up in more persistent inflation.
Despite keeping an eye on inflation, the IMF has raised its expectations for the US economy, projecting 7% GDP growth this year and 4.9% in 2022. But it also says developing economies are falling even further behind, struggling to get hold of vaccines and lacking the fiscal firepower to spend their way out of trouble. Meanwhile, there's been widespread speculation on Wall Street about when and how fast the Fed will taper or rein in its bond buying program, which is designed to boost the economy. With the Delta variant pushing up coronavirus cases, though, the Fed is keeping its cards close to its chest for now. Giles Gibson for CGTN, Washington.
Meanwhile, parts of the United Kingdom are opening up to people from the United States and much of Europe. Fully vaccinated travelers will now be allowed to enter England and Scotland without quarantining. Well, here's Nicole Johnston with more in London.
So what it effectively means is that if you're in Europe or the United States and you want to travel to England, at this stage it only applies to England, from Monday you'll be able to enter with no quarantine required. Now, up until then, it's been a 10-day quarantine, which has basically really put a dent in international travel and tourism. It's made it practically impossible. You will still have to have a PCR test on day 2 and another test before you arrive in the country. So still some restrictions there, but great news for the international tourism and travel industry, and also for the more than 5 million Europeans who live here in the UK. They'll be able to reunite with their families and have visitors. So that's the announcement this far. And for Europe, at least, it should be relatively straightforward, because for those double vaccinated people, they have a digital COVID passport. It's well established. So for them, entering the UK is something that shouldn't be too difficult in terms of smoothing out the process. So far, it's only going to be one-way travel, and that's because the United States has had an executive order banning the UK citizens from entering the US. It's had that since the beginning of the pandemic, and now under the Biden administration, despite talks going on between both countries, it seems that that won't be lifted anytime soon. Obviously, for this very lucrative route between the UK and the US, the travel industry and the British government is desperate to get it happening again.
And in Japan, experts say the pandemic is changing consumer trends. They say, for example, although most people eat out and travel less, they appear to be buying more consumer electronic products, such as televisions in particular. Here's Terence Terashima finding out why.
Japanese experts say more than $9 billion would be cut from private consumption after Tokyo entered its fourth state of emergency to curb COVID-19 outbreaks. Food and travel industries have been hit the hardest, but electronic retailers have been reporting steady sales due to a stay-home demand. They say shipments of home appliances such as air conditioners, air purifiers and refrigerators rose by 1% from the previous year to nearly $23 billion. Television shipments have also shot up.
The Olympics demand has boosted television sales. Many customers who purchase them want to watch the games on big screens. We've seen a 10% increase in sales compared to the previous year.
Some customers say they've used their Olympic tickets refunds to buy new TV sets. This came as organizers decided to hold the games without spectators.
The popular ones are the large 55-inch TVs, particularly the organic electroluminescence models.
Industry experts say until Japan manages to contain its outbreak, the demand for home appliances such as TVs will remain steady. Some manufacturers say they hope nationwide vaccinations will help lives and consumption patterns back to normal. Terence Terashima, CGTN, Tokyo.
Meanwhile, Venezuela's businesses are adapting to a changing economic landscape. Many franchises are leaving the country while local brands are learning to deal with the scars left from years of hyperinflation and, of course, the global coronavirus pandemic. Mary Trini Mena reports from Caracas.
The lights are out for many of the fast food franchises that were so familiar for so long. Across Venezuela, name brands like Subway and Burger King are slowly disappearing.
The market has been hit and we are facing a complex situation.
Over the last 7 years, Venezuela has experienced its worst ever economic crisis with record levels of recession and hyperinflation. According to the Venezuelan Franchise Chamber, 450 franchise brands were operating in the country 7 years ago. Now that's down to 250.
This is a business where if your place is not making the expected revenue, you can simply withdraw, and tomorrow, if the conditions change, you can come back.
The COVID-19 restrictions have made things worse for many businesses. In March, the American fast food chain Wendy's announced it was leaving Venezuela, and the Spanish clothing group Inditex closed its doors in May.
The pandemic also brought de facto dollarization to Venezuela. Prices are set in US dollars, and local merchants say they see a slight change in the economy, allowing them to have more realistic budgets. Some businesses have been able to adapt, and some new local brands have emerged.
This building once housed a Wendy's franchise. Now, a group of entrepreneurs is renting it for 3 different brands. One offers bread, a second offers donuts, and a third gourmet sandwiches and burgers. Pan de Tata is using some of the empty space left when Wendy's moved out.
After the pandemic began, we started our delivery service. In Caracas, there had basically been no delivery, so that pushed us a lot. Now many businesses are growing, using our bread. That's creating more demand and giving us recognition.
Pan de Tata is also creating jobs.
I think now it's a little bit easier to find a job than 5 years ago, when it was very hard. Some companies now are looking for a specific profile for young people like me.
The owners have a plan to expand to other cities in Venezuela or eventually become a franchise if the economic conditions in the country allow it. Maritrini Mena, CGTN, Caracas.
And let's head over to New York City now, where there's a new attraction that's looking to entertain and educate. Right on the banks of the East River, a miniature golf course has been opened to educate players about the real threat that climate change is bringing to the globe. Karina Huber with more.
Putting Green, a new mini golf course overlooking the East River in New York City, is about much more than breathtaking views. The 18-hole course provides an opportunity for players to contemplate different themes related to climate change and the environment.
We encouraged and invited community partners, nonprofits, local high school students to conceive and design each hole about a climate change issue that affects them.
A placard at each hole describes each theme, highlighting a problem or solution. Hole number 3 features a polar bear with information about the melting ice caps and how that is impacting the bear's habitat. Another hole looks at how cows contribute to climate change by emitting methane gas. Hole number 12 talks about the importance of creating energy-efficient buildings. The placard says nearly 70% of New York City's greenhouse gas emissions come from its pre-war buildings.
I think it's good to teach both adults and kids because there's some information on these sides I didn't even know, especially some of the stuff about urban resiliency to climate change. It's interesting.
Educational aspect that, even things we didn't know, all of a sudden you go up to the hole, you read the little paragraph and it's like, oh, I didn't realize that, or, so just certainly, it's a way to inform people while also letting them have some fun.
Regular golf courses have been criticized by environmentalists for being harmful to ecosystems. The organizers at Putting Green say they made every effort to construct the course with environmentally responsible materials.
All the decking you see here was actually upcycled and reclaimed from the Domino Sugar refinery building. The large globe at the front entrance to the site is actually made out of used bottle caps and recycled turf from the holes. So we tried to take every step we could to make it as environmentally friendly as possible.
In an interesting twist, the site itself sits on land once owned by Con Edison, the city's main power supplier.
Putting Green is hoping to accomplish a hole-in-one, not only educating the public about climate change, but also contributing to organizations that are actively fighting it. Organizers here say all of the profits will be given to local charities that have sustainability projects. Karina Huber, CGTN, New York.
And shifting focus now, here's a look at commodity markets. Brent oil prices rose above $75 a barrel today. As expected, crude inventories in the U.S., which is the world's top oil consumer, fell to their lowest since January last year. Now, traders say that suggests that the rise in cases of COVID-19's Delta variant is having little impact on mobility globally. Meanwhile, gold prices climbing to a more than 1 week high. That's after the U.S. Fed struck quite a dovish tone yesterday. That gave a signal that policy tightening would begin anytime soon. Also, a softer dollar lent further support to the metal today. Well, we're going to take a short break now. Still to come. Mobile money services finally reached some remote parts of Nigeria. And some South African businesses still bet on the township economy despite recent unrest.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Nigeria,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys. The greatest sights. The greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
And let's go to Senegal, where farmers in the most arid regions of the country are now building drought-resistant gardens. The gardens are part of an initiative to improve food security in the country and also halt the Sahara Desert's steady advance. Here's CGTN's Joy Kirukijuma with the details.
Boki Diawe village, a border town in northeastern Senegal. Farmers here are hard at work, planting circular, drought-resistant gardens known as Tolu Kir. The gardens are part of Africa's Great Green Wall project. It is an ambitious attempt to plant an 8,000-kilometer belt of trees across the length of the Sahel.
So you see here, it's almost 100 papaya trees. Here you have the medicinal plants in the front row. The next 3 rows are dedicated to the vegetables, a variety of vegetables, the papaya, the lemon trees, citrus trees, cashew trees, the native trees, fertility trees, and at the back the baobab and the African mahogany, which are bigger. So in the end, we have an island just here.
Ali Ndiaye, an agro-engineer, designed the Tolu Kir to have a multifold purpose.
You need to think of the Great Green Wall as big, but with actions that are permanent, useful and consequential. And not just say we should make the Great Wall greener, but you see, and it's possible. Imagine 1,000 Talokewa, 2,000 Talokewa interconnected. 1,000 Talokewa equals 1.5 million trees. Do you realize? So if we start, we can make a lot.
Ndiaye started the project when he could not return to Brazil, where he is based, due to the COVID-19 crisis.
I feel good. I've done a lot in Brazil, but I feel better being at home, and I think that this is probably making the diaspora think as well. The building of our dear Africa. It has to be done by people who are here, but also by the diaspora, because we have a lot of knowledge outside the country. We have to come back and build.
According to Ndiaye, the key to success of the Tolu Kir Gardens has been a strong sense of local ownership. For residents such as Musa Kamara, this project offers an opportunity to feed their families better.
The day people will realize the full potential of the Great Green Wall, they will stop these dangerous migration routes where you can lose your life at sea. I think it's much better to work the soil for 2 years only. With what they will harvest here, They will never want to leave because they will have their fathers, their mothers, their wives and their children with them. It's better to stay, work the soil, cultivate and see what you can earn.
It is not clear how successful the circular gardens will be. But in the 7 months since the project was initiated, around 24 of them have sprouted across Senegal, according to the country's reforestation agency. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
Now, the adoption of mobile money in Nigeria has not seen the kind of rapid progress the country's central bank had expected when it was launched 10 years ago. Nonetheless, some progress has been made as more people in rural areas tap into the technology. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus with more on that story.
Olamide Haruno is one of the more than 20 million mobile money customers in Nigeria. Thanks to the rollout of the mobile money initiative, she's able to send, receive and save money at this roadside mobile money shop in the Nigerian commercial capital of Lagos. Before she resorted to the use of mobile money, she would need to go to a bank to carry out the transactions.
Well, I think using mobile banking is easy, is fast, and it saves stress rather than going to the bank to queue and all that. So you rather just go there once and for all.
Mobile money shops like this are now becoming common sights in Lagos and across the country. The Central Bank of Nigeria is hoping to leverage the initiative to achieve financial inclusion for the country's 38 million unbanked adult population. There are more than 20 licensed mobile money operators in Nigeria, including banks, with hundreds of thousands of agents providing the service to clients across the country. This also includes clients who are already in the banking system.
You know, in the entire value chain, there are a lot of players. So, you know, the value in it beyond, you know, fostering transactional services between players. Also, you would see that, you know, there are people who are actively employed by the people that are in that value chain. So there is the employment angle, there is, you know, trade.
Nigeria still lags behind some of its African peers in the adoption of mobile money, but the numbers are growing rapidly. As of January last year, the volume of mobile payments in the country topped 7.4 million transactions, up from just over 700,000 in 2019. In the vast rural areas of Nigeria, mobile money services are quickly becoming the main means of sending, receiving or even saving money.
One of the things that I foresee, or that, you know, would be a huge deal breaker, especially on the economic growth side of things, is, you know, a world where we can then start to push cross-border transactions through mobile money.
With internet penetration rapidly expanding in Nigeria, in addition to its huge unbanked population, the prospects for growth of mobile money in Africa's largest economy look bright, and experts say it's only a matter of time before it becomes the leading player on the continent.
If you look at the numbers, scratch the percentage. Now, if you look at the actual numbers in terms of, you know, how many of our banked people are actually having access to financial services, I would say that we're not too far off from some of our counterparts in other African countries.
The Central Bank of Nigeria recently issued additional comprehensive guidelines to further regulate mobile money services in the country. The Apex Bank says it is still confident that ultimately mobile money will help make the difference in its financial inclusion campaign. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Now, the recent unrest in South Africa damaged hundreds of businesses. But despite the impact, property developers, retailers and entrepreneurs are saying they remain committed to the fast-growing consumer markets of the predominantly black townships. Here's CGTN's Beryl Oro reporting.
Over 300 people died and about 3,000 stores were looted during the recent unrest in South Africa. Over half of the looted stores belonged to major retailers and fast food brands.
It feels sad knowing that, you know, I work very hard, you know, for my money and, you know, open a restaurant that is going to like support my family. And at the end, people just come, you know, just to, you know, to loot my place. It took me 5 months, you know, to prepare this restaurant. But, you know, someone will just come and destroy it, you know, in 30 seconds. And yeah, which is sad.
At least 161 shopping malls, 11 warehouses and 8 factories suffered heavy damage. The hardest hit areas included Durban and Johannesburg, Soweto and Alexandra townships in KwaZulu-Natal and the economic heartland of Gauteng. Despite the losses caused by the recent unrest, property developers and retailers say they remain committed to the fast-growing consumer market of its predominantly black townships. Exemplar Retail had 5 of its 27 malls damaged.
I don't think anyone ever foresaw the extent of this happening, but there's no doubt we have learned a hell of a lot over the last week, and we will certainly be putting mitigation measures significant in place that if anything were like this were to happen, that would be a lot more self-sufficient on the security side of things.
Vukile Property Fund, for example, will repair its damaged Daviton Mall in Johannesburg, one of the first township malls, and will forge ahead with a $6.1 million upgrade of the site.
We're definitely going to continue, to invest in the areas. I think strategically we are very committed to there. I think, we feel that this is where the majority of South Africans live. By bringing malls to them, you add tremendous value to the people's lives. And we can see it, if you can take away the cost of travel for a consumer, it puts a lot of disposable income back into their pockets.
But many small business owners don't have the financial elasticity to bounce back on their own.
People are so generous. They are willing to, to help, and we're still waiting, for them to help because of, like now, I don't have money, to start. As you know that I took my money that I saved the time when I was, a soccer player. So like now I'm depending on them, and obvious, I still want to hear from the government. Let's hope that, they are going to help because of this is something that was helping me to put, bread on the table.
Real estate investors and entrepreneurs have spent the last 2 decades targeting rising consumer spending by the black middle class in areas that were disadvantaged for decades. Although the recent unrest was a major setback, most are determined to take on the challenge to forge ahead to the attractive profit margins forecast. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And before we leave you, a quick look at Africa's currencies. Nigeria's naira gained at the official investors and exporters window as dollar supply surged over 200% today. But it did depreciate significantly by 3.9% at the parallel market, closing at 525 naira against the dollar. That's after the ban on the sale of dollars to BDC operators in Nigeria by the central bank. Meanwhile, South Africa's rand firming up against the dollar after fresh reassurance by the US Fed that any prospects of interest rate hikes are distant. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send us your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching.